Well, we've still got some folks joining us, but it is 6 o'clock, so I'm going to kick us off. Good evening, everyone. I'm Ariel Cates. I'm the Director of Programming at Village Preservation, and I'm so glad that you're here with us this evening. A quick bit about Village Preservation. We have been documenting, celebrating, and fighting for the preservation of Greenwich Village, the East Village, and NoHo since 1980. We work to expand and extend landmark and zoning protections and stop inappropriate development while also encouraging appropriate development in our neighborhoods. We host roughly 75 programs a year, all of which are now virtual and most of which are free and open to the public. Our events are meant to illuminate the cultural and architectural heritage, history, and depth, and the value of preservation in our communities. We are a nonprofit membership-based organization, so your involvement and support mean the world to us. You can learn more at our website, villagepreservation.org, and please consider becoming a member or making a donation if you're able at villagepreservation.org/donate. We are so thrilled to be partnering with Liz Thompson's The Village Trip. Hi, Liz, welcome.
Hi.
For tonight's event. The Village Trip is a community-wide celebration of all things Greenwich Village, the revolutionary ideas, the experimentation, the wildness, and the sheer madness and joy of it all. We call our home the Village, but it is also unceded traditional land of the Lenape and Munsee peoples. I want to acknowledge in this archival recording the Lenape and Munsee communities, and especially their elders, past and present, and express gratitude for their stewardship of this land, for contributing to its geography, and for the use of their language as place names. If you'd like to find out more about this, please reach out. I'm glad to offer resources. So just a bit of Zoom protocol. Please feel free to use the chat, as some of you already have, to say hi, tell us where you're joining from, or to raise any issues or thoughts. If you have questions specifically for our speaker, however, please use the Q&A function. It just helps me to keep track of your questions. You can submit those at any point during the talk, and we'll get to as many of those as possible. So I am very pleased to introduce our speaker for this evening. Donna Florio is a lifelong resident of Bank Street in Greenwich Village. Raised by free-spirited theater parents and famously eccentric neighbors who taught her to never wonder about life from the outside. Donna has, over the years, followed her heart as an opera singer, a network TV producer, a Wall Street executive, and an educator in Southeast Asia and Africa. She has kayaked and backpacked around the world. Growing Up Bank Street, a Greenwich Village Memoir is her first book. Donna, congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
And take us away.
All right, let's true this, folks. Hi, thank you very much, Ariel. Thank you, Liz. And hello out there, everybody. Okay, now let's see if Donna can possibly manage this technology. Okay, let's see what she does. Uh-oh, what's she doing? She's screwing up already. Oh, that part. Yeah. Okay, the share screen business. Okay, all right, I think I got it now. All right, so I'm Donna Florio. I was born and raised at 63 Bank Street, and this is my story, okay? Our story, I should say. And tonight, I want to take you through it in a three-part series, okay? The first part being the history of Bank Street, then a bit of the history of 63 Bank Street, which is the 5-story, 15-unit tenement building from the 1890s that I was born and raised in. And then some of the people who are in my book who lived up and down Bank Street, okay? So let me start here, okay? As Ariel said, this land belonged to the Lenape, okay? And it was their land for hundreds, thousands of years, okay, until we got here. Specifically until we got here in the early 1700s. The story of Bank Street sort of starts with Queen Anne of England. Queen Anne had a favorite little cabin boy in her navy named Peter Warren. Peter discovered that he was really good at sneaking up on Spanish and French ships that were loaded with furs and timber from the New World, and descending on them with a crew, stealing them and sailing them back to London to Queen Anne, who thought this was the best idea ever, okay? So she rewarded little Pete, and he went up the ranks of the Navy until he became an admiral, all right? And finally, as his final reward, she gave him 300 acres of beautiful land on the Hudson, including the land of the future Lenape. And for the record, absolutely no one asked the Lenape what they thought of this real estate transaction. But, you know, welcome to the world, new world, folks. Okay. So little town of Greenwich continues. And now we are going to go into the late 1700s. And what happened there is Manhattan, or the colony, was below a wall, in the wall of Wall Street. Okay. And wait for it, they were being hit by yellow fever epidemics. And when that happened, they got quarantined. Does this sound familiar to anybody at all out there? They got quarantined. Nobody knew it was mosquitoes, so they'd shut down all the businesses. Neither Alexander Hamilton or his new bank, the Bank of America, liked this idea. So Mr. Hamilton and his bank bought several lots of wooded land up here, okay? And he built the first branch office. Here's the branch office in the woodlands of the future Bank Street. And of course, it did become Bank Street. And here's another view of it, okay? So now Bank Street starts evolving. It has now this beautiful branch office, and it has elegant people like the couple down there walking around, but it also starts to get industry and working folks, okay? And now we're going to move ahead in time a little bit to about the 1860s, okay? This was a research science laboratory. It had many names over the years, but it evolved into, finally, before it closed in 1966, Bell Laboratory, okay? So there's a bank on one side, there are elegant people, and here down on this side of Bank Street are scientists, and they changed America. These scientists from 1868 to 66 invented stuff like the telephone, talking pictures, broadcast television, and broadcast chains, NBC, CBS, ABC, and for good measure, the binary computer pioneered here, okay? So here are some Westinghouse employees. When I was a kid, there were still factories here, wallpaper factories, spice warehouses, excuse me, okay? Now on the other end of Bank Street, the river end, we were 6 blocks, small blocks. The first few blocks were very elegant, and I will get to them, okay? But these blocks were the river. Here's the Hudson at the foot of Bank Street, okay? They were very much working docks, and as well, Bank Street had generations of longshoremen families living here, okay, on Bank Street, and I knew many of them, okay?
Donna, are you here with us?
The shipping industry, okay? And they'd become very, very, very seedy. This area down here, which is leading up to it, had really gotten kind of crummy and dangerous. Bell Labs had closed, okay? There were these railroads that went across, okay? The extension of what you all know now is the High Line, but you can see there were 2 railroad tracks crossing the rivers right behind you. There were, for example, when I say seedy, there were roving packs of sex workers down here day and night, all right? Now, I'm not going to admit to anything, but I have heard rumors, some of you are watching, you know, that kids would hide, wait until a truck went by and the trucker stopped and selected, and the happy couple climbed into the truck. And kids would run out with sticks and start banging on the truck. You know who you are, and I know you're watching, okay? I will say no more. So in 6 blocks, we had wealthy and fabulous. Yes, they're coming, all the way down to kids with sticks banging on trucks, okay? I can't lie. This is what it was on Bank Street. I told you wealthy and fabulous is coming, and here it is, okay? This is Bank Street looking up to Greenwich Avenue, which is the creme de la creme part of Bank Street, okay? Here, we had people like Lauren Bacall, who became Miss Greenwich Village and left to find love with Humphrey Bogart and fame in Hollywood in the late 40s. So bye, Lauren, have a very nice life. We had John Lennon and Yoko Ono here too, all right? They were Bank Street people wandering around, just more folks on Bank Street back when I was a kid, all right? And we had people like CBS journalist Charles Kuralt, who was doing his show on the road and lived on Bank Street as well. And I saw Charles all the time around here. Everybody did. All right. So that is my little overview of Bank Street. And now I'm going to get to 63, okay? Here comes 63. I'm going to use my cursor. There's 63 behind the horse and buggy. Okay, this picture dates from about 1933, all right? So this building was built in the 1890s, all right? When it was built, it had and has 5 stories, 3 units per floor, and a superintendent's apartment in the basement, all right? It was heated by coal, not by coal radiators, but by braziers of coal, okay, that you put in little units in the wall. And it had coal stoves in each apartment. It had shared bathrooms, okay? And it had shotgun style rooms, which is to say room, archway, room, archway, room, archway, no doors, just built to house as many immigrants as possible, because of course in the 1890s, immigrants were flooding into town, okay? So that's how it lived until 1930s, okay? This is what it was modernized to and what it looks like today. And here I am, hello, waving to you from the 2nd floor, all right? It was modernized. 63 units, all 15 of them got private bathrooms, flushometers, they're called on the architectural permit, gas stoves. The heat was now provided by cast iron radiators, all right? And the place is tiny, okay? I would say probably 325 square feet if I'm lucky and I don't breathe hard, okay? So, you've seen Bank Street. Now you've seen a little of 63. Now I'm going to start bringing in a few people. Here's Amato Opera, which is on Bleecker Street. Okay, this was an opera school as well as an opera house. It was started by Tony and Sally Amato after World War II. It started in the basement of a church here in the village. Okay, and then they moved into this building on Bleecker around Sullivan Street, which was the former cinema, all right, in the, I'm going to say the early 50s, okay? And my parents at the time, who'd married in 1950, were living in a studio on West 12th Street. My mom was a soprano at Amato, an aspiring soprano, and my father was studying lighting design and theater direction here at Amato, okay? So there they were. So there are my parents, okay? And let me bring them in now. There's Mom. And Florio, I thought because she's never happier than when she was on stage, I'd show her to you in her element. Mom was very vivid and very charismatic and really lived to sing, just like Floria Tosca in the opera. She really was. That was Mom. I narrowly escaped being named Floria, by the way, because I think she got pregnant when she was studying Tosca. Thank you, God. No Florio for me. All right, the other introvert in the house. Here's the other introvert, my dad, okay? Here he is directing at Amato Opera, and right around him, surrounding him is the cast of whatever opera it was, AKA my family, my big extended family, the cast and crew of the Amato Opera House, okay? Now it's time for me to bring in one more Amato character, and that's my darling Annie Friedel. Annie Friedel was a soprano. She was Sally Amato's sister, okay? And of course, she was an aspiring singer, of course. What else is new on Bank Street? Annie Friedel, her husband, John Friedel, and their one-year-old daughter, Irene Friedel, were all living in a studio on Commerce Street. Annie had a day job. Her night job, of course, was being a soprano, but her day job was keeping the books for a realty firm in the village. So in 1955, two apartments came up in 63 Bank Street, apartment 4B, apartment 2B, okay? Annie grabbed apartment 4B for herself and her family, and she told my now pregnant mother and father about 2B, and they ran over, okay? So this building became opera singers in 4B and opera singers in 2B, and all of us at the Amato Opera. And now I think it's time for me to make my entrance. And here I am, okay? The squib in the Villager said, "Opera baby arrives." And here's the opera baby, and here are the opera parents showing her off in where else? Washington Square Park, okay, which was my a couple of blocks from the theater. So there I was, okay. Probably it was around this time, at this age, that my parents made the decision to abandon the bedroom. It's only a one-bedroom apartment. Abandon the bedroom to me because apparently I would wake them up by throwing toys at them when I was ready for entertainment time. So they fled. They left me in there and they fled to the living room. The Friedels, having had the same experience with Irene, had also fled into the living room. So the parents are out here on folded out couches, and baby Donna, baby Irene are in the bedrooms having a good time, okay? And there we were, okay? And 63 was my playground, and that's 63 behind me. It was my playground, Irene's playground. Hi, I hope you're there, Irene. Did you figure out the technology? You better be here. Okay, so there we are. So the Friedels were at Amato and the Florios were at the Amato, okay? And here's me and my mom at the Amato Opera, okay? And we all sang together, okay? Irene and I were, as soon as we were able to walk, we were put on the stage. I think the first opera I was in was Madame Butterfly. Yeah, it was, okay.
Oh, this is glitchy, everybody. Thanks for bearing with us.
Here.
Hey, Donna.
Hey, Donna.
Yeah.
You're
cut out.
Can you take Madame Butterfly?
Can I what?
Take us back to
Here?
the next one.
This one?
Sorry,
I'm not sure what you're asking for.
Okay, just keep going.
I can't hear you.
Keep going. That one.
This one right here?
Yep.
Okay. What do you want me to do with it?
Start over.
Start over?
You're injured, so we missed a little bit of it.
Okay, sorry. So I was saying that all the Friedels, all three Friedels were at Amato Opera, and all three Florios were at Amato Opera. That's what I was saying. And this is my mother and I at the Amato. Okay. And here is John Friedel and my mother, with John apparently getting a very nice little handful of my mother, we had a lot of togetherness in this building, folks. We had a lot of understanding. It was a very advanced building. It was just that kind of thing. So that remained the situation until I was about 7, when John Friedel, Anne Florio, and I all went to uptown to the Metropolitan Opera. John entered the men's chorus. My mother entered the women's chorus. I went into the children's chorus and later became an actress. So I basically stayed at the Met with them until I left for college. That's what happened there. And now I'm going to take you into a few of the folks who were in 63 Bank Street. Okay. Oh, there are Friedel. Sorry, I forgot about that. There's Irene, my sister in all but DNA, and there's Annie, and there's John. Okay. Whoop. Come on. Okay. Now, in apartment 1A of 63 Bank Street was Mr. Benson. Mr. Benson had been a very successful actor of Shakespeare in the 1920s. Okay, he spoke 3 languages. He had great reviews. I have his reviews. He got rave reviews in all sorts of things. Okay, and how do I know he was so intelligent? Mr. Benson would get the New York Times. They were delivered around the corner about 7 o'clock every Saturday night. Okay, Mr. Benson would take the Times crossword puzzle, and he would finish it, the whole thing, in ink by 9 o'clock that night, okay? I know this, why? Because the downstairs radiator was our whole swap, okay? Whatever you had that you were done reading, whether it was Art Forum, Life Magazine, Edgar Cayce, this building was very big on Edgar Cayce. We all had former lives in this building. He would put his New York Times crossword puzzle on the top. And you know, somehow, as each section went under it, that Times crosswords puzzle always stayed on top. And it became the reference point for the whole building. My father would be up here going, damn it, I just can't get 12 down. I can't get it. So he'd open the door and he'd look around, see if anybody's looking, and he'd sneak down to the radiator to see what Mr. Benson put. Annie Friedel did it, I know for a fact, and at least several other people in the building did it, okay? Now, here's another picture of Mr. Benson, and this is him in costume on the left, okay, pointing his finger. I never knew Mr. Benson like this, and the reason I'm saying this is that Mr. Benson was a nudist. I never saw Mr. Benson wearing anything. That's how I can tell you for a fact he had a big tubby stomach and little stubby toothpick legs, okay? And when I got old enough to realize what was going on and find it funny, my mother would say, keep your eyes on him and don't giggle, it's not funny. He's a lovely old man. It was easy for her to say. She wasn't a foot tall looking up like this, but you know, anyway, you had to make allowances. Mr. Benson was a lovely, lovely person. And he's one of the people that I remember most vividly at 63, who's in my book. And then there was Mrs. Swanson. Now she was right next door in apartment 2A. Mrs. Swanson and Mr. and Mrs. Swanson, we never knew him, but Mr. and Mrs. Swanson had rented an apartment 2A since the 20s. They had a touring vaudeville act. They were ballroom dancers and vaudeville dancers, okay? They had toured all over the world. I loved Mrs. Swanson, loved her. And I loved rainy days because on rainy days, that was when Mrs. Swanson would take me down to the basement to open up her trunk and let me play with her costumes, okay? She told me about the Titanic, about how the musicians had played on the doomed Titanic as the waters rose up and before everybody drowned. Now, she would let me put on one of her costumes and a tiara. I insisted on the tiara, even though it came down like this. So I was always like this with the tiara, but I had to have my tiara on. She taught me how to play dance the Charleston, and we would play doomed flapper dancing on the Titanic as the waters rose. That was my rainy Saturday with Mrs. Swanson, and boy, did I love her, okay? Mwah. She was also interesting to my parents because Mrs. Swanson insisted to my parents that during the 1940s, the biggest communists in the country had lived right below her in apartment 1A, and that the FBI had used her apartment to spy on them. So, is this true? Is it not true? Years later, when I began to get interested in researching the book, I called my parents and said, am I nuts, or do I remember her complaining about wild parties and noise with the biggest communists downstairs? And my parents said, oh, no, you're right. That's it. That was what she always said. That sent me on a hunt for Mrs. Swanson's communists, okay? And here's what I came up with. I came up with the Browder family. Earl Browder, who was the head of the American Communist Party from the 30s through the 50s, but not just him. Earl's brother, his sister Margaret, his girlfriend Kitty Harris, as opposed to his wife and 3 kids in Yonkers, but who's looking, okay? And in-laws and everything, okay? Guys, these are these redacted files, okay, from the FBI. Forget that they weigh 12 pounds, because I weighed them the other day. These are all files that were clearly and written while the FBI was in, indeed, Mrs. Swanson's apartment 2A from 1940 to 1944, which is when the Browder family was living down there under assumed names, okay? Now, I'm going to show you another picture of, this is Earl Browder, okay, who's the head of the party. Nice mustache, right? Okay, so not only did I discover, were they having wild parties down there, but this man was having secret meetings with Stalin. And from 1940 to 44, in apartment 1A, the Browder clan was running one of the biggest Soviet-Russian espionage rings in the United States, literally under the noses of the FBI agents in apartment 2A who were listening, and listening through the floor. There's a hole in the floor in apartment 2A. I swear to God, it's there. I have pictures, okay? So how did they get away with it? You got to read the story, okay? It has Hoover, it has President Roosevelt. I can't get into it here. I just cannot. You got to read it, all right? Now, let me keep you in apartment 1A because I have to segue a little bit, okay? We're leaving 1940 to 1944 and the Browders and the FBI above them. Now we're going into the 1960s. My mom's parents, my grandma and grandpa, were in Brooklyn. My grandpa died, okay? My grandma moved into this apartment 1A. So now we've got the Friedels in 4B. We got the Florios in 2B. Now we've got my grandma in 1A, which I thought was the best idea ever because now I had even more home cooking, okay? So I loved that grandma was here and she became a villager. I loved it. Long series of events. Grandma developed brain cancer while I was in high school. And in order to keep her calm and happy, I ended up basically living downstairs, all right? And long and short of it was, I was living down there when she died, and by the laws of that time, I inherited the apartment. So at 18, I had my own Greenwich Village apartment. And for the record, for you parents out there, an 18-year-old villager with her own apartment is not a good idea, at least not this 18-year-old. I was having way too much fun. My friend Andrea, who is a childhood friend from the village, moved in. She knew half the village, I knew the other half the village, and the party was on. The party was on, okay? Now, also at that same time, across the hall from us in 1A, in apartment 1B was a young lady our age. We were now in our 19, 20 years old, Michelle. Michelle got a boyfriend. Here's Michelle's boyfriend, Sid Vicious of the Sex Pistols, okay? She met Sid when he was out of jail on accused of, I say accused because he was never tried and he was never convicted, accused of the murder of his girlfriend, Nancy Spungen, up at the Chelsea Hotel on 23rd Street. Okay, he was out on bail. All right. So Sid and Michelle had this look, spiked hair, and you know, they rocked the leather and the studs, okay, and the whole thing like that. They hung out at clubs like CBGB's and the Mud Club. And there were Andrea and I across the hall, and I'll give you a little idea of what we look like. We were the Uptown Glitter Girls. Ding, 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 ding. There I am with one of my friends. You villagers out there, that's one if by land, two if by sea. How many of you were at the Halloween parties with me? Go one if by land, right? So we thought we were quite glamorous and very glittery. And what was hilarious about all of this was that sometimes we knew Sid was next door. We were well aware that he was there. And sometimes all four of us would meet in the hallway on our way out on a Saturday night. So there Sid and Michelle, and they're all done up with their leather and their spikes, and there Andrea and I with our, you know, our little bustiers and our little Audrey Hepburn gloves, and aren't we something? And we're all twinkling out, and everybody would smile and wish everybody else a lovely evening, and off we would go dancing into the night, okay? We were young, we were dumb, we had no sense of boundaries until one February in the 1970s.
Last fall for the murder of companion Nancy Spungen, a subsequent suicide attempt while out on bail, and then an attack on the brother of singer Patti Smith that sent Vicious back to Rikers Island. He had just made bail again and was celebrating his release when he took what witnesses told police was an injection of heroin. Authorities say if that is what happened to Sid Vicious, they may be able to find out during an autopsy. All they know for now is that he had been asleep with companion Michelle Robinson at the time of his death. She's an unemployed actress who was hustled away from the scene along with the victim's mother as the crowd of curious and neighbors grew in size.
Oh my God.
Richard.
Oh my.
Donna Florio lived just across the hall from the apartment in which the singer died, but she would not say whether she was among the 8 people who attended last night's party for Sid Vicious. Did you know that Vicious was staying here?
Yeah, I did.
Can you give us any insight as to how he had been acting recently?
I don't believe this going on.
But police say they were told by the victim's girlfriend that his last hours were spent looking toward the future.
Okay. Anybody here who remembers Young and Dumb? That was me, Young and Dumb. I have to say that Sid's overdose, not that I had ever done heroin or even thought about it, but I was definitely pushing the boundaries as we do in our early 20s, or I did. And Sid's death, I'm going to tell you, was a wake-up call, frankly. It was a wake-up call. Now I will leave 63 and I'm going to take you to the bigger world of Bank Street, okay? And I'm going to start out the bigger world of Bank Street with the best of the best, which is 72 Bank Street and my darling Marion Tanner, okay, in her beautiful 1890s brownstone. Marion Tanner was a socialite who moved here in the 1920s, a flapper, a socialite from a lot of money, okay, and a very prestigious family. She had an artistic salon here. She was an aspiring actress. People like George Gershwin came to play her piano. The Barrymores came to her salons, okay? During the 30s, in the Depression, Marion studied Buddhism and became an ardent and lifelong convert to the Buddhist religion, okay? And she decided that her life's mission was to save people, one soul at a time. Marion's approach to that was to break the locks on that door, and there's another door under those steps. She broke those locks too, and everybody was welcome, night and day. If you needed a place to sleep, if you needed some food, if you just needed a shoulder to cry on, that's where you could go. You could go to Marion's, okay? Now, by 1955, this was Marion, okay? This is Marion who slept in their sleeping bag on the top floor. And some people on Bank Street besides me remember that by this time, the house was in such disrepair that there were literally pigeons flying through this room. I'm not kidding, okay? Pigeons flapping through, all right? There were, by this time, by the time I showed up in the 50s, she had anywhere between 30 to 50 people living in this house with her, including abandoned children, all right? There were people snoring under that piano. There were people sleeping with their heads in a closet and their feet sticking out. There were people, because there were some very mentally fragile people there. There were people wandering around in various states, okay? And there would, in the middle of all this, was Marion, who was doing yoga. She was a lifelong yoga aficionado. And I don't know, you can laugh all you want. That woman you're looking at right there could go into a full split like that, okay? No problem for Marion, ever, okay? And what I also remember about her is yoga and making soup. She would run around the village asking for used vegetables from the grocers. Look at those eyes. Who would say no to Marion, okay? So she would make all these soups and feed her people. So it was maniacs running around the house in states, sleeping in the closets with their heads stuck in the closet, Marion doing yoga and cooking soup, okay? That all shifted in 1955. Marion's nephew, Edward Everett Tanner III, who wrote under the name Patrick Dennis, wrote Auntie Mame, a book about a nephew and a fabulous, fabulous auntie, okay? The Auntie Mame book became a runaway bestseller, okay? It became a Broadway musical, first it became a Broadway play, then it became a Hollywood movie. Later in the 60s, it became a Broadway musical with Angela Lansbury. But that was when we discovered another side of Marion. Even a dedicated Buddhist on Bank Street can be a diva, okay? There's Roz Russell playing Auntie Mame. Marion always knew, Mawa, am the real Auntie Mame baby. That Roz Russell person, she don't know nothing from nothing. Poor Patrick Dennis had fits about this. I mean, he just absolutely had fits, but Marion didn't care. I'm Auntie Mame, okay? She was my babysitter. And you have to believe me when I say my parents were bohemians, that they, in their right minds, thought that Marion in a house full of drunk, crazy people doing yoga and soup was a wonderful place for me to grow up. But you know what? My parents were right. It really was a wonderful place to grow up. So I will leave you, Auntie Mame, and take you to another fun place, okay? This isn't 11 Bank Street, but let's say, all right, wrong picture, but let's pretend it's 11. Oh, it is 11, I'm sorry, excuse me. Okay, this was another three-ring circus. Sorry, I lost the visual. The first person in this household to talk about is Yeffie Kimball. Now, Yeffie was a Native American artist. She was very, very prominent when they moved in, okay? She had shows at MoMA, at the Whitney. She wrote a Native American cookbook. She testified to Congress about Native American rights, okay? It was wonderful, except for one thing. She was a cultural appropriator extraordinaire. Yeffie was no kind of Native American nobody nothing, okay? It was a total fake. Her name was Effie Goodman. She was a Missouri farm girl. She made up the entire identity. She got away with it to Congress. She got away with it in writing. She got away with it to make exhibits at the Whitney. How? I don't know. She was amazing, okay? And here's her husband, Harvey Slayton. Now, Harvey, a Brooklyn boy, was a very famous physicist, okay? He actually helped develop the atom bomb during World War II at Los Alamos. And when we detonated it at Hiroshima, he was so horrified by what he saw that he became a peace activist, okay? So there they were, and they had, in this place, glittering parties, wonderful parties, but that's not all they had. There was also a dead woman in their ceiling, and there was a dead woman, the dead woman's very active ghost floating around the house, okay? That's not enough because it's Bank Street. There was also Mary Louise Wilson, an actress who would then later go on to win a Tony, spying on them from across their backyards. You think Alfred Hitchcock invented anything? He invented nothing. Bank Street had it first. We did Rear Window here. You're hearing it here. You're being recorded. That's where it was done. And she even admitted to it in an article in the New Yorker in 2002. Okay? So there's a lot more. There's a lot more to this story, but I'm going to stop here. Y'all have to read the story. Okay? Have to read the book for this one. I'll take you to another wonderful place, okay? Here is 37 Bank Street, okay? And there was a powerhouse of a woman here, passionate about yet other things, named Bella Abzug, okay? There was Bella, my other neighbor, of course, passionate about gay rights, women's rights, clean air, clean water, okay? That look on her face, I got to tell you, I admire her. She helped make me the woman I am today, but so help me God, that was the look on her face a lot of times. I was scared to death of Bella Abzug. I really was. I admired her, but believe me, from afar. She and my father definitely had some bing, not because they had different politics, but because they had too much similar personalities. But again, you have to read the book, okay? Dad and Bella, my biggest nightmares growing up. Dad and Bella. And now I'll take you down Bank Street a little bit more. 75 Bank Street, home to two of my favorite couples on planet Earth, the Guilfords and the Bravermans, okay? I will start with the Guilfords. Jack and Madeline Guilford, okay? Jack, the actor, Jack Guilford, they lived there, and he was an MC at Cafe Society down in the Village, a few blocks from here, which was the first interracial nightclub in New York. And Jack, for a while, was dating Lena Horne, Lucky Jack, okay? Madeline, who was from the Bronx, had been an actress and a radio personality from childhood. So these two were absolute powerhouses, okay? In the 50s, in the late 40s and 50s, they were accused of being communists, and they were both subpoenaed, and they were both brought in front of Joe McCarthy's House Un-American Activities Committee, okay? Now, Madeline stonewalled the committee. Madeline went into character as a ditz, which she was anything but. This brilliant woman, Madeline, was anything but a ditz, but she went into character and she stonewalled them, and she kept answering and going back and forth and back and forth. Her son, Joe Guilford, my brother from another mother, put his mother's exchange into his play about them called Finks, and it's brilliant, okay? She killed those people. They didn't get one answer out of Madeline Guilford, not one, okay? Then they tried Jack. Jack raged at them, okay? He raged at them. He refused to name names. He refused to give them information, okay? The thanks they got for standing up for themselves was that they were blacklisted for years. They could not get work. False friends fell away, okay? The happy ending to this story is that they made great comebacks, okay? Jack got a wonderful gig as the Cracker Jack Man on TV's commercials, okay? By the time I was a kid, I adored him as the Cracker Jack Man, and I know a lot of other people did too. He was on Broadway in A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. He did movies like Cocoon and Catch 22, okay? Wonderful, okay? So the Guilfords. And the other favorite couple I had in there, Rosie Braverman, Rosie and Marty. Rosie, who is about 4'8". Hi, Rosie. Rosie and Marty moved to Bank Street after World War II, okay? Rosie required 3 things in any neighborhood, okay? She needed a kosher butcher. She needed a synagogue, which she found on Charles Street, and she needed a good beauty parlor. Okay, all those three things she found in Greenwich Village, and in they came. Look at her. Can you understand, of course, why she was one of Woody Allen's favorite character actresses? Okay, now, after Rosie died way too soon, left us way too soon of cancer, Marty, I don't know the lady who's in the photo, but that's my beloved Marty. And a group of us, including Madeline Guilford, Jack had died by then, coalesced when Rosie died around Marty. And now I want to speak to a phenomena of the village, okay? If you were too gay or too politically out there, or just you didn't fit in either in your hometown or your home family, and you came to the village, you found clans of the heart, okay? We made clans. We didn't have any connection of DNA, not one drop, okay? We had clans because we loved each other, okay? And Marty and Maddie and three other wonderful, fabulous women and I became clans of the heart. We shared everything together. We just were a clan. We shared dinners and heartbreaks and triumphs, okay, and raids to the thrift shop, okay. And Marty, I love you, and our clan is still going today, okay. All right, and now I'm going to take you to my last visitor at 51 Bank Street. Here, these two buildings, these two windows, this was my darling, darling friend, Tish Touchette. Tish moved in 1957. Bear in mind, I arrived in 55. Tish had a wonderful white poodle named Albert. And since I loved dogs, the truth of the matter is Albert got my attention first, okay? I was a toddler and Albert was instantly my friend. Tish had a very popular act as a nightclub female impersonator, okay? And by the way, female impersonator was his specific term for it. His take on it, as he explained it to me, is that female impersonator is a showbiz term and drag queen is a lifestyle term. And he characterized himself as a female impersonator. So that's what I'm telling you he was, okay? Over the years, Tish and I had such a friendship, I can't tell you. He would dress me if Andrea wasn't busy telling me what to wear. See, Andrea, red shirt, here I'm wearing it. If Andrea wasn't busy telling me what to wear for it to go out clubbing, Tish was telling me, okay? So he'd get me dressed. We'd go to Broadway together. I think we laughed at Dame Edna for 3 solid days after we saw it together, all right? And we just chat and share stories, okay? Now, the nightclubs pay cash, okay? So Tish didn't really get too much in the way of Social Security. And by the time he was in his older years, he was on a budget. And that's when he started doing stoop sales. He would sell off his outfits and his tiaras. I gave him my Barbie dolls to sell. And so the years went on, okay? This picture was taken last year. My favorite, I have many favorite Tish stories, but one of my favorites is that Tish, who is now in his 90s, would every month take his rent check and walk into the building management office. And those of you who are still hanging on with village landlords will appreciate this. And he'd walk in and go, "Hi, I'm not dead yet." And he'd drop his check on the desk and he'd leave, okay? So, and absolutely lastly, Tish left us a month ago. Tish, friend of my heart, I love you. People are watching and you're still wonderful. I'll never forget you. And that, Ariel and Liz, is the end of my story.
Thank you so much, Donna. Your stories are just so incredible. I'm very much encouraging everyone to get the book, and I know it's just chock full of so many more stories just like this. I wanted to ask you some questions about the process of writing the book. Can you talk about sort of what brought you to the point where you wanted to write it and what your research was like to, I mean, you clearly
Sure.
found out so many things.
Okay, well, my research started from being a nosy little girl who asked everyone from her grandparents. I used to get my grandmother drunk so I could turn on the tape recorder. I'd get the best stories out of Sicily you ever heard. My father couldn't believe it until I played them for him. But I would ask everyone, where'd you come from? What happened? How did you get here? What did you play with when you were a little girl? And I always kept a diary, so I would write these things down. So that was one part. Another part is that I was a special ed teacher and I was downtown on 9/11. We had to protect the children, so we stayed locked up and I saw everything. And after that, I basically had what you would call a breakdown. I was battling severe PTSD. At that point, I couldn't leave my apartment. I started writing to get out of my own way. I started thinking, what can I write about the neighbors? So I started racking my brain. What do I remember about Mrs. Swanson, about Mr. Benson? I'd run down and say, hey, Tish, when exactly did you know you're going to be a nightclub performer, blah, blah, blah. And I started writing, okay? And then it became an addiction. It was like, oh, now I have to find those damn Browders. Where are they? I have to hear more. I got to know more about this. Did Benson really have good reviews? I got to go up to Lincoln Center Library. So as I got better, it became more and more of an obsession. As for the research of it, you name the place, whether it was the library, the internet, the neighbors. I recorded a number of people, okay? Anything I could to get hold of the story.
Yeah. We have a question. Well, we have a couple of questions. From Susan, where did you go to elementary and high school?
Oh, okay. Elementary school was kindergarten public school, PS 41, for those of you out there. Yay, 41. And then I was transferred to St. Joseph's School by my darling, but really, what were you thinking, bohemian parents sending me to a parochial school where they thought I was a sinner because I wore stage makeup, and it was not a good fit. This was not a marriage made in heaven. So I was put back into public school in 5th grade. Thank you, Mercy. And eventually I became one of the first girls let into Stuyvesant High School on East 15th Street, which is another story. Go peg legs, but oh, mamma mia. One of 30 girls and 2,800 boys. Oh, mamma mia. Another story altogether.
Cindy wants to know, what is your most memorable moment from Bank Street?
Oh, boy, Cindy. Yowza. Yowza, from Bank Street. Okay, I can certainly name some of the most embarrassing ones, Cindy. One Sunday morning in 1970, I was out on our fire escape. We would have our window box flowers, and we would move them out there to get the sun, and then we would water them out there so the water would run down, okay? And one morning I was out on the fire escape and I had the flower pot and I was watering. We had musicians, we had actors, I didn't care, and I vaguely knew John and Yoko lived there, but it's 1970, I'm in high school, it's all about me, right? So I didn't care about them. And I'm watering, but then I see these very hairy people holding hands and they're walking underneath. I'm on the fire escape and I was, oh my God, that's actually John and Yoko. And I leaned out, forgetting I had the watering can in my hand. And I leaned out and the watering can turned and I doused John and Yoko with water. I mean, honey, they were wet. They were wet. All that hair, they needed that hair. It was, Yoko was like this. And I was just standing like, I just poured water on John Lennon. I just poured water on, I mean, my brain just froze. I couldn't imagine that the universe still had me. Was God going to strike me dead? Yoko kept walking. I think she was pissed. And I just said, I'm sorry. John was looking up at me. All right, a beetle is looking at me. I mean, now I'm going to fall off the fire escape anyway. And he said, oh, it's all right. It's all right. No worries. No worries. And he kind of shook his hair, and he kept going. I have to say that really was one of the more memorable moments on Bank Street.
That is incredible. I have no stories that can match that. Okay, let's see. From Jennifer, so much has changed in the village. I'm curious what you think. Well, I'm curious what you think of Bank Street today as opposed to in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And Jennifer is curious about what you think is the biggest loss in the neighborhood.
Okay. All right. So, let's see. What do I think? The biggest loss in the neighborhood, without the slightest question, is the small businesses, the fish store around the corner, the corner grocer, the little 5 and 10 that can't afford the rents anymore, because those people were so much part of our lives. All right. So very much part of our lives. All right. As far as what Bank Street has become, let me tell you a little secret about Bank Street. Everybody comes here and makes their own Bank Street. I have these wonderful young neighbors downstairs. They came in here as boisterous kids out of, 21 years old, out of California. They made this magnificent chain, Los Tacos #1 Tacos. We were all tasting tacos before they started. Lovely young women living next door. What I think is that the secret to Bank Street is that wonderful new young people keep moving in, and they're making their own Bank Street. And when they asked me my stories, like, oh, well, we weren't artists. I said, my parents were nuts, but in their own way, who cares? That was their Bank Street. Come and make your own Bank Street. And they do. And that's what's great about it.
Love that. Thanks. Let's see. So Debbie wants to know, what did you do as for a living as an adult, and are you still living on Bank Street?
Oh, Debbie, growing up in the village had many, many merits, and I learned from Auntie Mame, don't ever wonder about anything from the outside, jump in, okay? And I learned from Tish, darling, tits and teeth, excuse my French, but that's how we talk to you. Be fabulous. And I learned from Bella Abzug, stand your ground, woman. I learned a lot of amazing things. Can't even tell you what I learned from my parents, but it was quite interesting. It wasn't much of a career plan. As career planners go, Bank Streeters were, whoop. So to answer the question, I did everything. I bounced around, okay? I followed my heart, which at times was the best thing in the world, and at times was the biggest pain in my tookie ever. I wanted to try TV production. I wanted to try living in Southeast Asia. I wanted to try teaching children with disabilities. That stuck, and I loved that my whole life, okay? I wanted to try this and that, Wall Street. So I can say I just bounced around. Okay, and to answer the question, yes, I'm still on my beloved Bank Street. Here it is. My DNA is in these bricks.
It is, it's true. We have a great question from Jill. What is your hope for the book? And are there any other books like it that you know of that have made this special contribution to preserving this moment in time and place?
Hi, Jill. Thanks for the question. My hope for the book, believe it or not, is, yes, Bank Street had John and Yoko and Charles Kuralt, but it also had people, and a lot of them are in my book, that no one's ever heard of, okay? But they were amazing people, and they taught me lessons. And what I realized as I was writing the book is that the stories of these people, whether it was the Guilfords and the House Un-American Activities Committee, or Bella and women's rights, or the scientists inventing the telephone, the stories of the people of Bank Street are the stories of America itself. And what I would like people to do is put down my book and go to the window, their own window, and look around and say, who the hell is living across the street? Is that a Vietnam veteran? Do they have something to teach me? Is that a coal miner? Can they teach me something? Okay. I want people to put down the book and look at their own neighbors and find out exactly who these people are and what they can contribute.
I appreciate that so much, especially now when everyone is at home so much. It feels like such
Hey, put your mask on, go talk to the neighbor, open the window, won't kill you. Go ahead.
have a network of neighbors.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a great question from Carlene. You have a time machine and you can go back and interview one person on Bank Street. Who would you choose?
Carlene, if you're a kayaker, I know which Carlene you are. If I could go back and would, oh my God, one person. Oh, Carlene, don't do this to me. Don't do this to me. I think I would want to interview Yeffie Kimball, who I knew as a child. I kept bothering her as a little girl until she let me plant bulbs with her in her garden. And see, how the hell did you get up the nerve to make a whole life up as a Native American and just present yourself? Who the hell do you think you are? Okay. And what about the real Native Americans, by the way? Okay. So I think just in terms of her sheer audacity. The other one, because Judge Crater's widow lived here, Stella Crater, that's another story, very mysterious. I'd want to see if I got the real story out of Stella. She took her story to the grave. Man, if I could get her back, I'd get her story too.
Speaking of taking stories to the grave, Tiffany asks, back in 1979, you wouldn't say whether or not you were at the party at Michelle and Sid Vicious's apartment. How about in 2021?
Oh, I haven't been to their apartment in years, Tiffany. Read the book, girl. I ain't telling you nothing.
Well, I guess this raises for me another question, which I think is always so interesting with memoirists, especially. How did you choose what to put in the book and what to leave out?
Okay. It's so funny because I've read at least one review and a blog that said, this didn't happen, this couldn't have happened. Okay. But that one person, I've since heard from at least 5 former Bank Street kids. Okay. My era, who went, how the hell did you leave out the Parney Farm? What do you think you are? Leaving out the circus, Ruth and Addie's circus, huh? Oh, and I'll tell you another thing. You forgot this and this. I had to stop somewhere. I could have gone on to 4 volumes. I could have just stuffed it. The book could be like this, okay? I had to turn it into something that people could reasonably read, have the history. I wanted these people set in their own periods. I wanted them to be products of their time and their place. And I had at some point, shut up. Even though you're a Florio, shut up. Okay. That was good editors. Get good editors, folks. I'll tell you that.
Well, do you have plans for another book?
I certainly have enough stories for another book. I'm certainly having a wonderful time with this one. It just got published today. Hooray. Okay. There's plenty of material. I can tell you that.
Plenty of time. Well, this has just been such a complete delight, Donna. I'm so grateful to you for sharing all of your research and your story, not all of your stories, but enough of them. And I hope that everyone who doesn't have the book already will grab one. We are going to send out an email after this event with a short survey, which it's always appreciated if you can take a few minutes to give us some feedback about our program. And we'll include in there the link to Donna's book and a few other links as well, to our partners at the Village Trip and the interview that they did with Donna. So thank you all again so very much.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Ariel. Thank you, folks who listened.
Take good care, everyone. Have a good night.
Find your own Bank Street.
Thank you. That's
Bye.
right.